we will not have the interview anymore this afternoon. We will go directly into coffee break. After the coffee break, we will go into the breakouts. There will be 3 breakouts. I'll remind you all of this just before the coffee, but just to give you a quick sense of the day. Those will be outside, and then we'll meet together at the end. Each group will have a speaker to share their insights from the roundtable, from the breakout session that they had, so that we can all really benefit from the learnings before we close the day. Great. Thank you so much. And now we'll kick off our opening. It's my privilege to be moderating this session on empowering the Arab youth, upskilling, and jobs in the digital age. And so I'm going to jump on stage and then call up my speakers who will join me. I go from here. Great. Our first speaker is Dina Sharif, the Executive Director of MIT Legatum Center for Development and Entrepreneurship, as well as founding partner of Ahead of the Curve Consultancy. Please welcome Dina. Thank you. Our second speaker is Ms. Georgia Varisco, the Chief of Youth and Adolescence Section at UNICEF Lebanon. Welcome, Georgia. And our last speaker, last but not least, of course, Ashraf Bouali, the head of OECD Istanbul Center. Please join us on stage. Welcome. Okay. So I come from the world of startups. And in startups, we tell all the startups they have to have their 30-second or 1-minute pitch. So we're going to turn the tables on you. Instead of me introducing you, would love to hear from each of you in your 30-second to 1-minute elevator pitch about your background, what you do. We can start with you, Dina, if you'd like. And we have the mics right here. Yeah, we can try.
I feel like the pressure is on to do 30 seconds.
Do it. Do it.
Anyway, my name is Dina Sharif. I'm probably most well known in the region. I'm Egyptian for founding the company Ahead of the Curve. I'm also a partner in a VC fund called DisrupTech that invests in fintech in Egypt. An executive director of a center at MIT called the Legatum Center for Development and Entrepreneurship, which is a center that focuses on entrepreneurship and innovation as a pathway to economic prosperity, specifically in emerging markets, or what I like to call global growth markets, because actually the majority of global growth is happening within markets like ours. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Dana and Ghurair, for inviting me. Super excited to be back at AUB. I was saying at MIT, to get the president of MIT to come attend anything is very tough. So it's wonderful to be back in the region where everyone is always so invested in building a better future, and lovely reminder about how we're all in it together.
Thank you, Dina. Georgia.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Georgia Varisco. I'm the Chief of the Youth and Adolescent Section within UNICEF Lebanon. And I've been in the Middle East now for over 6 years. I was working in Jordan, heading a similar section there for UNICEF prior to joining Lebanon. And the focus of my work has always been around youth and how do we support youth to transition to productive adulthood, and the programs really focus on both providing young people with the needed skills, or equipping them or giving the opportunity to have access to skills that they can use to move to a productive and fulfilled livelihood, upskilling, reskilling, looking particularly, of course, also on digital, which is a huge opportunity for many, and also has the opportunity to break down some key barriers for young people. So I'm really excited to be here, and I would like to thank both Spark and Al Ghurair Foundation for this event, and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashraf.
Thank you very much, Omar. Did you set between 1 second and 30 seconds, or did I?
You can take 1 second if you want. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
It's great to see everybody here. I landed yesterday here in Beirut. I flew in from Istanbul. Thank you very much for the people who've invited us, also the president of the AUB, to receive us here. I have been appointed, I think it's a year ago, by the Secretary General of the OECD to lead the new regional hub of the OECD in Istanbul. It's called the OECD Istanbul. Before that, I was a member of parliament in the Netherlands. Before that, I was a diplomat in the Dutch service. The OECD has its headquarters in Paris. We're an evidence-based policy organization. We have 38 member states, Canada, the United States, a lot of European countries, not only European Union countries, but European countries, Turkey, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. And all these governments, they gather together in Paris to discuss policy making on different themes around the globe. Now, at this moment, there's also the discussion in the OECD to do the outreach to non-OECD countries in Latin America, in Africa, in the MENA region, in Central Asia, Southeast Asia. And that's where my office comes in. We have been created recently a new office to do this outreach of the OECD to non-OECD members on the various themes and globally. So I'm really looking forward to be here with you, and it's great to be in Beirut. Such a long time I haven't been here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashraf. And, you know, we'll dive in straight with a discussion of skills. And my first question is going to be about what skills are in demand, what skills are less in demand. And then when I wrote this question, I thought, what do we even teach when things are moving so fast, when skills are becoming obsolete so quickly? So, you know, I would love your take on any of them. What do you see skills in demand? What skills not in demand? And how do we teach in a rapidly changing environment? Sure, you want to kick us off, Georgia, and then we'll go to Dina and then Ashraf.
Yeah, thank you. No, this is a really good question, and I think one that we have been probably dealing with within our work. I may leave more the technical side to the colleagues here on the panel. As part of the skilling and upskilling program that UNICEF has been working on, we've really been dwelling on what are the needs of the market, what are the needs of the private sector, how we ensure that the skills that young people need are localized to the need of where they live. And what we found, I think both here in Lebanon and even in Jordan before, in many of the consultations we've done with the private sector, is that alongside, of course, the technical skills, what it's really important is to ensure the young people have, you know, what we call them either 21st century skills, transferable skills, so ensuring that young people have those softer skills they can make them excel in whichever sector that they want to be in. So I think this includes, for example, critical thinking, teamwork, communication skills, agile methodology, and whatnot. So I think that should be sort of the foundation for everyone to have, whether it is the development of more technical or digital program and others. Together with this, what I've seen that it's also really important is ensuring that we provide two things we offer two things as part of our learning for young people. One, I think financial literacy is very important to ensure that people know how to manage money or the income once they start a new job. And second, I think it's also a lot around mindset and how you support with social innovation skills, human-centered design, and how to help people see the opportunities that are beyond just looking for jobs, but becoming their own creator of their own future. So I think the foundation and the basics should be a mix of all of this to make every young person, despite or regardless of their background, successful in their transition to employment.
Thank you very much, and really important to hear about the soft skills, the teaching people how to learn and think and be able to handle different situations. Ashraf, would you like to take it? Maybe you need to click it on.
Thank you very much. I also forgot, because Omar was so kind to only give me 30 seconds, so I'm going to use a little bit more of the 30 seconds now.
I think you used it more than the 30 seconds last time, Ashraf, but we'll cut you some slack.
To share something for you. I didn't only come here to talk with you and to engage with you, but we also came with a present. As you know, the OECD has this extremely valuable research which we make on various topics. So I'm here with my colleague Demla, which will raise now her hand over there. She has the gift, actually, which we will share with all the people over here. It's all our latest research on the different topics which we touch up on. And normally you have, you normally have to pay for it. And we made you a QR code because this subject is digital.
Right, and they gave you 100% discount.
And we give you 100% discount, exactly, Omar. So there's various studies. For example, one is on joining the forces for gender equality, the OECD financing SMEs and entrepreneurs scoreboard. And there's one which I've liked very much. It's a bit of a thick one, but if on a free weekend you have some time, the recent developments in youth entrepreneurship. All these ones will be given to you by Demla, my colleague, and they're free for you to download.
So give us some nuggets of insight from some of these reports when it comes to skills.
I'll go first. I'll tell you something about what, I mean, the digital transformation these days makes us also to transform. And we have to make sure that the widening of the gap between the labor market and between the economy should be confronted somehow. What we see is that more and more digitalization, more and more artificial intelligence, which creates also for a lot of groups in society more and more barriers also. We have to confront them in a smart way. And we can do that at least by what my organization do is the evidence-based policy making. We look into the evidence, we make reports, we measure things, and we come up with solutions. So for example, recently my team in Istanbul, we've organized a big event on gender, also on the digital transformation and the role of gender. We gathered all the participants from around the globe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, but a lot of participants from the MENA region as well. And we've discussed the changing labor market in this digitalized world and the extra new barriers which we see these days and what they call the digital gender divide. And how can we make sure that we confront that? So one of the things which we'll discuss here as well, Omar, is the upscaling and rescaling and the trainings. We also want to, for example, promote that more female STEM students go to do the STEM studies, the technological studies. And we have to make sound policies also to create an equal level playing field for everybody. So what I've mentioned also in the beginning, Omar, is that my center is a hub of receiving all these people, and also we hope to see you in the future to come to us as well in Istanbul to discuss with each other the policy challenges which we have and the solutions. And I see it as my task also as the director of this center not only to talk with government officials, and I really invite you also to come to us, to have the entrepreneurs, the young people, the female leaders, to come and to talk to those policymakers and to talk to those ministers directly. I will offer you my platform to bring you together, to sit together around the table, and to discuss real solutions. I think, Omar, I've mentioned to you in the beginning,
yes,
we are that platform, and with the knowledge of the OECD and our strong headquarters with 3,000 people who are constantly making this evidence-based policy to trying to close the gap of the many challenges we have in digitalization.
Amazing. Thank you.
Dan is going to take advantage of that platform, I don't doubt. I think I'll be brief. You talked about what are the skills that are needed. We're thinking about from a more technical perspective. Obviously, you know, we can talk forever about the need for digital literacy and IT skills and data science and analytics. We definitely need that. AI and machine learning coming up very fast, and I know we'll debate that a little bit later. I think when you were talking about financial literacy, I think that is a skill that needs to be honed in on. But now I'm thinking that's even irrelevant. We need to be creative to educate people on digital currency. Cryptocurrency is the future. I'm not sure that many people really understand how to make use of that, and that is coming whether we like it or not. And it's an incredible tool to give agency back to the individual and really create new markets if we learn how to use that properly. But I want to come back to this point about transferable skills, because I think within rapidly changing markets, and this is no longer something that applies to countries like mine, Egypt or Lebanon or any of the so-called emerging markets. This is something that is applicable to the United States and Europe, everywhere in the world really, and these kind of essential transferable skills like adaptability and critical thinking and problem solving and communication and the ability to collaborate and co-create, these are all essential skills that we need to see evolve. But I think I want to zoom in on certain elements that I continue to feel are deeply lacking, which is like this concept of leadership. Wherever we go, we tell young people. I had to give a commencement speech this year, so I watched all these other commencement speeches, and all I kept hearing over and over again, you are going to be the future leader of tomorrow. What does that mean? That is the most cliche thing I've ever heard. Not everyone is a leader, and leadership is an activity, and we're not really educating either from the K-12 level or even within higher education what leadership really means and what it means to step up and exercise leadership, because that requires that we bring together all these different skills that I just mentioned into actually identifying a problem, dissecting that problem, and then exercising leadership to mobilize resources and humans to actually solve that problem. And I think when we talk about problem solving, we're constantly telling young people, we need to help you learn how to problem solve. But the reality is, in all of the training programs that I've been a part of, and I've been in entrepreneurship education for years and years and years, and I founded the Center for Entrepreneurship at the American University in Cairo and spent a lot of time on youth training. We don't necessarily educate young people on how to really take apart a problem. It's not enough to say this is a problem. How do we dissect that? And then once we dissect that, how do we get them to also understand how to identify the assets that they have to solve that problem? Because there's so much abundance, and the Arab region in particular has so much abundance. We don't really talk about how to use our assets in the problem-solving exercise. So I think, for me, I think we really need to do better at really breaking down this concept of leadership. We also need to do better at helping young people break down and dissect the complexity of the problems that they find themselves in. And we need to actually shift their mindset to how they can understand the concept of abundance and the assets that they have at hand that they can use to solve these problems. And I think the last thing that I would want to say is values, 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 because we really need to bring integrity and ethics back to the very core of education. And I think, we can have great skill sets and not great humans, and that's not really going to help us. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think that's great. The values conversation is so important, and it's so discussed so little. But I want to stay with you on this. I'm going to switch around some of our question order and ask you, because you worked with AUC and you were talking about we don't teach. And so one of my questions is, how do we really close the gap between the educational institutions and the jobs? How do we help AUC, AUB, all of these institutions? We have Dr. Fadlu here. I thought we'd ask this question in his presence. How do we help close this gap? And the question is for everyone, but we'll start with you since.
First of all, just to clarify, I didn't say we don't teach. We teach.
No, I didn't say. Yes, okay. You get what I mean, I think.
I do. But I'm a stickler with words.
I can see that. I'll be more careful.
I do think that we're not having the the best conversations that we could have. Education, you don't educate just to educate, you educate for a purpose. One of those purposes is to actually see amazing humans go out into the world and out into the professional workforce. But another part of it is that we're preparing them to enter the workforce, into the job market, right? So I think higher education, when we talk about the job market, we're always saying, is the private sector talking to higher education? Yeah, probably not enough, for sure. We can do a lot more to have better conversations, more meaningful conversations around how we can better prepare university students for the job market. But what about K to 12? You know, universities, we accept students who finished 12 years of schooling, and those 12 years are like the base, right? They're the base of who these students are as people, and they're the base of their mindsets. I don't know, maybe Dr. Fadla has a better answer than me, but I've been in higher education my entire career. I've been teaching for a long time, and I think you can definitely shift mindsets at the higher ed level, and you can definitely build skill sets. But I actually think you can do a lot more for mindset shifting at the high school level. Okay. And those are formative years, and I don't think we're having really good conversations between K to 12, higher ed, private sector, or beyond private sector, and those who employ, right? Because it's not just the private sector employs, the government employs, civil society employs, and then you have, you know, the very teeny tiny percentage of people who will go out there and create their own venture. But we're not seeing connected conversations across the continuum, and I think that's what's really needed for us to really see youth better prepared to enter the world, basically in whatever form that comes in.
Georgia, would you like to add some thoughts on this closing the gap?
Okay. Yeah, no, I would just agree on the fact that sometimes, for whatever purpose, we are focusing a lot on the older adolescents or the university years, but education is a continuum. And the sooner we start and the sooner we think about the issues that we want to solve through education, I think the better outcome and impact we will have. So I really second that we should not just be looking at high school, but we should look at elementary school and really plant the seed at KG level. So reforming, I guess, education systems in this lens, I think in the long term would really, I guess, the outcome would outgrow the spending at the times needed to do this. And this, I think it's important across every education system, not just specifically the Lebanese or others, is really across the board. So I would just second what was just mentioned.
Anything different, Ashraf, or?
No, I can add that we of course have to have a close look at how we can narrow the links which are needed in society in a broader sense. And it's not only universities and academics which we need in the world. We also need vocational training, for example. They are very essential for our economies. They play a very key role in the GDP of our societies. We always focus very much on the academics, and I think also it's time to look how we train our youth in a vocational manner, be also proud of those people who go and work in vocational jobs. We need people who work with their hands, plumbers, everybody. They're essential for the economy. So I think also we have to focus on that. We had actually also a very interesting event also in the Istanbul Center on Vocational Training. So that's an important one. We see also that the digitalization also replaces some kind of works. But funny enough, the digitalization doesn't really replace the vocational training kind of jobs. So they become actually even more important. So that's
okay, great. I want to talk a little bit about upskilling, because we have various upskilling programs here. And maybe we'll start with you on this, Georgia. What can we learn from effective upskilling programs, right? We have them, but what can we extract as lessons learned, best practices, insights from things that are on the ground that are being implemented, whether in Lebanon or whether elsewhere, and how can such programs target vulnerable communities? And I know this is an area that UNICEF is particularly focused on.
So upskilling is very important, and some of the lessons learned that I've seen over the last few years. First is to ensure that we look at the localization of it, right? Not one solution cannot be applied single-handedly across the board. Particularly when you're working with vulnerable communities, you need to think about where these young people are, what are the opportunities where they live, and how do we ensure that whichever program you design helps them one, learn skills that they can use to become productive, but also help them realize what the assets are around them that they could use to address issues, for example, within their communities or beyond. So the localization agenda within it, I think it's really important. Second, I think going back to the gender aspect, I mean, we need to be aware that there are gender barriers, or there are barriers that affect females and males, boys and girls differently. So again, looking at this and designing programs that do help break down this, it's really important. You mentioned the digital gender divide, and I think when you think about challenges, there's also opportunities. For example, when we've seen after COVID and the impact of an accelerated digital transformation, how we could have taken advantage of some of the technology to reach girls and women that we were not able to reach before, maybe because of mobility issues or because they were living in more conservative issues. So being very pragmatic and very purposeful when you're designing such a program. Something else which I think is really important is the mindset and the values, if you want, and ensuring that somehow there is this growth mentality, and you help building this growth mentality, because the challenges are many, and we cannot get people used to providing them with solutions. They need to be in charge of their own solution design in a way. And we've seen it particularly important, for example, when we do in social entrepreneurship program, and providing somebody with some support versus asking the person to tell us what they need and how they can help identify the support needed. The impact of this in the final outcome of the SME development is very different. So one would take a lot longer, and it would always be dependent on other people in finding solutions for them, whilst other putting time and effort in finding themselves the solutions and bringing in more people and just being really more innovative in the way they do things. So I think those are some of the things some of the learnings over time.
Ashraf, you I believe have some work on women as well that you wanted to share here.
Yes, and I think what in our studies has also shown that you find a lot of women working in routine kind of jobs, which are quite often also replaced by digital kind of job technologies as well. So there's this danger. But I think your previous question was about the upscaling and
yes.
Yeah? So we've been doing some digging in, and we found that two countries, one country is a member of the OECD, they made a national action plan. I've written it down because I'm always very bad in memorizing these kind of things. So Malaysia, which is not an OECD country member I'm working with, they came up with the master plan workforce, which they initiated to become a high-income nation by 2050. And they did that by investing in the VET, which I just mentioned as well. So the technical vocational educational training. So they have a whole national program, and the idea is that it will result that they become a high-income nation. Then Australia came up with a national upscaling program, which also had with rescaling and upscaling. It's a national program. It's funded by the national authorities. And also there you see that the vocational educational training. There we have two, and I think it's always good internationally to look to countries who have good policies, because it helps other countries. It's also good that they're not always, for example, countries from the European continent, but there's also other countries around, like Malaysia, like Australia, who can give us very good examples.
Amazing. And technical vocational training makes its second appearance here. And something that I discussed with Dina actually in our discussions was a national strategy, right? And you had an issue with strategic thinking at the national level sometimes, right? In terms of skills and comparative advantage. This was in our discussion. I wanted to see if you, how you see the opportunities of technology and digital transformation. We've talked a little bit about the challenges and what is needed from the national level in terms of strategy.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about that, it was under the kind of umbrella of how do you develop innovation capital in a country, right? People forget that in the United States, which is always looked to as kind of the go-to place when we think about innovation, Silicon Valley was created by the government. It was really fueled by the government. The Department of Defense identified all of these core areas that they needed to see innovation in, and they started funding that. They started funding R&D and providing grants for R&D in these areas, and that was then commercialized, and then Silicon Valley was born. But the reality is the United States is a very interesting, what is more interesting than I think Silicon Valley or Cambridge, Kendall Square, where I'm from, that has turned into a biotech hub, is what's more interesting to me is how at a national level the government really thinks through as a country, as a nation, how do we want to develop our comparative advantage? What are the areas we need to see innovation in? And then they start funneling R&D money towards those areas. And then you see ventures applying for that R&D funding, and that's how we see the engine that fuels innovation behind that. Now here in the Arab region, we don't have that. There is nowhere where we have that, including the GCC. You do not see governments sitting together and really thinking, these are the priorities for our country, but this is also the comparative. We want to be the best in biotech, or we want to be the best in, we could be the best in AI, why not? We're seeing an increase in the number of those who are being educated in engineering and STEM in particular. GCC is seeing one of the highest increase in numbers of women in STEM. It's a wonderful thing to see. But I'm not sure that we're necessarily connecting and saying, oh, well, we want to see our country evolve in this space and be a leader in this space, and so our education and our R&D money and everything is going to start flowing to see that happen. And so I think from a perspective of national strategy and policy, we're definitely not having conversations, the right kind of conversations at the policy level around what do we need to see happen in the innovation space to see our countries thrive. I think it was by pure mistake that we're starting to see fintech thrive. That was definitely not a directive of where we see fintech thriving in Egypt, certainly not a directive of the Egyptian government, but rather by necessity. 90% of the population is unbanked. You are not going to thrive or continue to create markets without some access to the formal financial space. And fintech was born, and the government had to, obviously get on that bus. But we can be ahead of the curve if we want to be. Not to borrow the name of my company, but we can be ahead of the curve. And universities have a big role to play also in working with governments to help them understand that they can start dictating the innovation needs of the country. And as universities and all the people who work in the innovation-driven entrepreneurship space can start really aligning to see a certain space grow and evolve.
Okay, great. And I hope that we can leapfrog, right? I think in Lebanon, we're seeing a lot of innovation in fintech because we've also seen in some ways the big challenges to the existing financial system. And so we're seeing innovation in solar in Lebanon, given the challenges we face in energy production in the country. So while we don't have necessarily...
Necessity is the mother of
necessity
invention.
indeed is the mother of invention, in lieu of a strategic government direction that maybe Ashraf was mentioning in Malaysia and other places. But really interesting. Thank you, Dina. I'm going to shift themes a little bit and talk about remote work, right? We went into a digital work and remote work in COVID, and that stayed a lot. And this also opens up a lot of opportunities, right? Opportunities for outsourcing job creation. We've seen it definitely in Lebanon, a lot of diaspora sending jobs back to the country. We've seen it in vulnerable communities. Can we how can outsourcing really help drive job creation, especially for vulnerable communities? And what are some effective examples of this? And Georgia, if you'd like to start with this. And I learned an amazing new word from Georgia, impact sourcing, which maybe will...
Yeah, so when you talk about outsourcing, one example that we have at UNICEF, which has been designed together with one of our partners, which is Lebanon, is how do we support youth outsourcing, but through what we call impact sourcing, which is basically a socially responsible outsourcing, where you're focusing on the employment for high potential, but at the same time, the ultimately beneficiary, those who can benefit from opportunities of this, are people, and in our cases, young people coming from more marginalized community. And as UNICEF set out 6-7 years ago in looking at how to create a network to support vulnerable youth, in particular, to have access to social entrepreneurship, social innovation, and the opportunity for learning about digital literacy and new technology. We also set out on started thinking about how do we support those most vulnerable young people in having access to the opportunities that come with remote work and outsourcing more in particular. So together with DOT, we designed an impact sourcing platform, which is called BOT. And it has been so successful that UNICEF Jordan picked up this idea and created also BOT in Jordan. I think the view is to support more and more vulnerable youth with the ability to have access to this impact sourcing opportunity, or this outsourcing. And when we think about vulnerable youth, quite often it's important to help them practice their skills as they work online. And the impact sourcing platform does exactly that, in the sense that there is a platform that is an intermediary between the young people who may be doing the outsourcing, whether it is tagging or micro work or however the task is designed. They're the interface between the young people and the customer, so that they can ensure that these young people produce quality work, which is then given back to the employer. And this helps them practice their skills and continue to increase their learning by doing, and become comfortable to be able then to take up opportunities within the broader gig economy through other outsourcing platforms that may require more independent work or higher skill. So this is a very successful example of what could work, and encourage all of you, if you're not familiar with BOT, to look it up and maybe start using it to support youth in accessing microtasking.
I like this. Microtasking. This is a new word for me also. And so the platform itself both teaches them the skills and then gives them the job, all under one roof. Is that correct?
So basically, yeah. So the bot identifies the employment opportunity and then identify the user in the network to conduct the work, which is microtasks. So it's divided into micro employment opportunities, and also have some data, I think, on the number of youth supported through, but I need to find it.
Okay, sure. Okay, you should talk to Ramo.
I think what you're doing is really amazing. It would be cool to partner with some of the really amazing edtech platforms out there. I'm seeing Rama's the founder of Little Thinking Minds. I'm not sure that we're taking advantage of platforms like that to start using their apps to get young children, even at the school level, ready for what is to come, and that can be easily done through some of these new edtech ventures, and see more partnerships between a UNICEF and an edtech venture, or a Ghurair Foundation, or even a university, and starting earlier on. Introduce yourself later, Rama.
Thank you, Dina. And Ashraf, any comments on this outsourcing, or we'll move on to our next theme?
Very brief. The only thing what I think is important when you look at outsourcing and remote work, for example, is to make sure that those people who engage in these kind of works, they have the social protection around it, so that we don't forget that. I think that's an important point.
Okay.
I don't recall that we did. I look at Damla now because she always knows all the publications we did. Did we do anything on remote work, for example, and outsourcing? No.
Okay, no worries. And I think that social protections are really key, and it's also part of some of the idea of financial literacy, right? So these people may be working for the first time, earning for the first time, ensuring that they have the adequate protections as they're engaging in the workforce.
Yeah, the only thing what I might remark is, you know, these days everything is international. You see these international supply chains, and it might be interesting to see how people around the globe, who have maybe vulnerable positions, can plug into these international systems without bypassing also a little bit the obstacles they have in their own countries.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense in terms that once you have an internet connection here, you can really start to get around, I don't know, that there's not a road, or that there is not, you know, other infrastructure basics that you might need. Georgia, do you want to share the fact?
No, just a brief is, I think that BOT is an excellent example of impact sourcing. And you're right in the sense that we need to help youth be able to take advantage of this. And that's why, together with many of the partners that I see here sitting in the audience, we've really set out to do this network of, it's called GIL, the Generation Innovation Leaders, which in essence is 14 innovation labs where vulnerable youth can have access to digital technology and build their skills. And within UNICEF program, we're really looking at bringing down digital skills and digital literacy to younger and younger generation, so that they can open up, so these opportunities can open up to them. So this is now a big part of our work. And
I think that makes a lot of sense, even with our discussion with Dina earlier about, you know, we can't start that late. We have to start at kindergarten, right? We have to start at kindergarten with the right values, the right skills, the right type of thinking, and we have to start early.
And just a second example I wanted to mention is something that we will be launching. It's not really out there yet, but together with the bank and UNICEF, we're creating this platform which is called Forest Tech, which has gig economy in mind, and it's a curated learning journey for youth online where they have access to over 17,000 industry certification, which is yet another vehicle to try to get youth more ready for the opportunities within the gig economy, including outsourcing.
Okay, amazing. So I'm mindful of our time. We have a little bit less than 10 minutes left. I wanted to shift and talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship. We talked about digital transformation and jobs. We talked about remote work and digital work and jobs. SMEs, and in particular, innovative companies, in fast-growing, scaling companies, can be a key driver for economic development and job creation. So how do we support them in doing that? What are some of the key challenges that they face? How do we help them address those key challenges, or what's missing from these ecosystems? Yeah, please, Dina.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna back up very briefly. The educator in me kind of wants like a board, and
I feel I'm making all these mistakes. I'm gonna get negative scores from Dina.
I'm not going to do that. No, so I think we fall into this trap of lumping entrepreneurship, or SMEs, and innovation-driven entrepreneurship all together in the same bucket, and that is a mistake. It's a mistake from a policy perspective. It's a mistake from an ecosystem perspective, because I think SMEs are extremely critical for economies. They are the backbone. We need to see we need to see constant growth of the SME space, but SMEs require different financing vehicles, very different environments. At MIT, we create a very clear distinction between what we consider entrepreneurship capital and ecosystems to support traditional entrepreneurship, and what is innovation-driven entrepreneurship. Talk about innovation-driven entrepreneurship. We're talking about entrepreneurship, and innovation is a continuum, but within an MIT world, we're talking about deep tech, tough tech. We're talking about AI, machine learning, biotech. You know, the birth of Moderna happened right out of MIT, and so that is innovation that requires hefty investment in R&D, and the Arab region is very, very far behind in our investment in R&D, let alone even where R&D is happening, and it is happening in Lebanon through AUB, it's happening in AUC, it's happening in the GCC through KAUST. The commercialization of it becomes very problematic, and that's where having an innovation ecosystem that is deeply integrated becomes very important. So how do we take, I recently discovered that Tunisia has one of the highest percentages of PhD students within the STEM space, and an enormous amount of R&D is taking place. No one is really investing in the commercialization of that. R&D is kind of useless if we don't commercialize it and take it to market. And we need to see that kind of convergence of the research piece in the tech space and taking it to market so that our economies can evolve and so that we can create jobs and prosperity out of that. Now, I think what we're lacking, other than that, a deeper investment in R&D, and I hope that the philanthropy world will start increasing their investment in R&D grants, which they are currently not doing, although we see a lot of flow of money from this region to the United States for R&D, which is unfortunate because we should be investing it here in places like this university or in my former university at AUC or anywhere else in the region. But ecosystems need to see a lot more collaboration between the corporate sector, between entrepreneurs, between universities, between risk capital, and between policymakers, and those are the kind of 5 elements. And they all need to be working together for innovation-driven entrepreneurship to thrive. Now, how can we create, we have very fragmented ecosystems here in the region, although we've come a long way. I've been working, and I was talking to David, I've been in this for over a decade, and so I'm kind of like one of the old timers, but we're still fragmented. And we have a lot of progress in the kind of tech space and the tech-enabled space. We continue to lag far behind when it comes to innovation-driven entrepreneurship, and that will be the engine for our growth. It will also be the engine for putting the Arab region on the map when it comes to competing globally and within the knowledge economy. And for that, we need to really double down on the R&D elements, and that comes from the school level, from the university level, and then really figuring out how we can take that and commercialize it.
Ashraf, I wanted to see if you had some comments on this and on OECD works as well on policies and programs. So curious if you have some policies or programs that support also the growth of SMEs. What do we need, and what programs are effective in supporting SME growth?
This works. We have indeed some studies, but let me first address, there's a lot of research being done on the issues, and we see actually on SMEs, but also when we talk about youngsters, basically 3 big problems. It's access to finance, it's the lack of skills also at SMEs, and the enabling environment, we call that. We've done indeed a research and on SMEs and youth in particular. I have these recommendations in front of me here. I'll just read them up. Is that a good idea, Omar?
Yeah, if you can read them quickly, then we'll...
Very quickly. Promote and stimulate entrepreneurship with role models and business competitions.
So that's a culture mindset kind of recommendation.
Embedded entrepreneurship teaching in compulsory education.
Okay.
Purpose entrepreneurship training outside formal education. Offer entrepreneurship coaching and mentoring.
Okay.
Improve access to finance. I just mentioned that. Support the development of entrepreneurship networks. So this is a bit the theoretical cadre, we call that. I always try with my team to say, and what do we do next? How do we move? So that's also the reason why I'm here. I've discussed it also with Omar. I'm ready also with all these people here in the room to look together with various MENA partners to bring these SMEs together and these youngsters together and to let them sit at the table in Istanbul at my premises and to discuss how do we fix this access to finance, for example. How do we make sure that the skills get upskilled? How do I invite these top-level decision makers to come and sit also around the table to create this conducive environment? So my idea is also, we know the analysis and the problems. Let's also step it up also all together and come with practical solutions. I'm also ready to do that. I'm really looking forward to see you also one day in my center, to sit with decision makers, but to sit also with the financial industry and to say, okay, what next steps are we going to take?
Okay, thank you. And sorry, please go ahead, Georgia. I was just going to mention that it actually resonates with a lot of what we've already said in terms of culture, in terms of education, and in terms of access to capital. Maybe, again, venture philanthropy could be another answer to this as well. Dina, you'd mentioned. Georgia, and then I think Dina wanted to mention something.
Just my point. It's great. I think we'd love to take up your invite and see how we can engage youth in this, in shaping practical policies or response to policy action plans to do that. But I think what it's really, really important is at this table, we need to make sure that we bring people from sort of different background, because the solutions that you will find for those that are better educated, that have the chance to go to university, are very different for those that haven't, and the one that come from more marginalized communities. And I think there is a lot of human potential there as well. And we just need to find a way to harness it and to provide sort of a vehicle to enable to unleash this entrepreneurial potential in them as well.
Amazing. Dina, you wanted to come? Just an answer to okay.
Just very quickly, the other element which I forgot to mention is the networking capacities. Don't forget that when you come together as individuals and you make a group, you are stronger in lobbying your government, you are stronger in lobbying the presidents of the business associations. So I think that is also very important to, set up your mind, find your allies and your friends who are in the same situation, who have this problem of access to finance, who have this, go sit together with each other, talk to each other, and form a block and make sure you become powerful.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, and I'll do this quickly, Omar, I know we're out of time. This access to capital is a very complicated issue, and I think we need to become a lot more careful when we talk about access to capital, because frankly, when we talk about capital, there are very different mechanisms for how to get access to capital, and venture capital is something that we talk about all the time in the Arab region. Venture capital was designed for innovation-driven entrepreneurship, but we talk to SMEs about venture capital. That's a mistake. Capital is, I don't want to say capital is stupid, but capital flows where there is opportunity and where the ideas are excellent. And we need to be focusing on producing much higher quality pipeline when it comes to the innovation side of entrepreneurship if we want to see a rapid increase in venture capital. I think the reason why we don't see those numbers climb is the pipeline is the problem. It's not that the capital is the problem. Then I want to say on the other side of that equation, when we talk about access to capital specifically for SMEs, there are structural barriers, right? The getting access to debt for small business owners is complicated in our region. It's particularly complicated to women, for women as well, and those are related to issues related to collateral and property laws. These are structural issues that have nothing to do with putting women in a room and training them on how they can put together a budget and submit it to a loan officer. You can do that, but that's not going to solve the structural issues, but yet you're telling women they're the problem because they need to learn how to put together a budget and to be able to put together a cash flow, when the reality is the problem is not them. It's in the structural issues that are biased against them. So I think we just need to have better, more nuanced conversations around issues related to access to capital and really have real conversations. Talk about the real issues that are inhibiting allocation of capital to where it needs to go, whether that be to, I don't like the word vulnerable, but whether that be to vulnerable groups or not. And also be very careful when we say that there isn't enough venture capital flows in our region. It's really a pipeline issue. It's not about the capital not being there.
Thank you. Thank you, Dina. And I wanted to see, maybe I'll take just one audience question. If there is a strong audience question someone would like to answer. Okay. Yes, sure. We'll hand him a mic from right here. Okay.
Try to be brief. I'm terrible at giving compliments, so I'm frank when I give them, right? This has really been one of the most enjoyable and enlightening panels I've had. You hit at a core point, which is the weakness of the university message, which is we're selling leadership, which is idiotic, as I've said for years. The best universities, which sadly have been cowardly and shied away from it, should be selling citizenship. That's what we sell at AUB, citizenship, right? Because if I think back to Vannevar Bush, without whom, so Vannevar Bush was the son of a preacher who became an electrical engineer because he loved electrical things at MIT, and he's basically founded not only what became the Manhattan Project, but the National Science Foundation. And I've read several biographies of his. He was a great citizen, Dina, right? Of course, he was also a professor at MIT and extraordinarily bright. He made enough money from his inventions he could have walked away, but he kept working until they basically moved him aside in his 80s. This is at the core of our problem, at least in the MENA region. You're right, universities cannot remediate the failures of K through 12. The greatest learning opportunity is actually not university. It's age 3 to 7. And we invest zero in it. For R&D, the Arab world has the lowest R&D investment. Israel is highest at 6%. US and Japan are next consistently. And we're talking last 30 years, right? 3%. Under 0.75% even in Saudi Arabia. I'm embarrassed to tell you what it was here, even in the good days. Yeah, but still the pipeline is in the schools. And where's our biggest failure? I speak as a board member of the American University of Kurdistan. Iraq is an incredibly important country. School there is rote memorization. How do you help, much less fix, the capacity to synthesize and analyze a 17 and 18-year-old who's been memorizing the answer to every question since age 5? So if we want to have an impact and develop the pipeline, he is the schools. And it's citizenship, because frankly, at my most famous as an oncologist, you could get an appointment with me within 7 days. The master plumber I befriended, I was lucky to get him within 3 weeks. So citizenship has to place value on all citizens, and that's our pipeline. Until we fix that, we're going to continue to lag behind the rest of the world.
Thank you. Like
I'm ready to get on that bus. So if you want, I'm with you. Citizenship is core, but AUB has always had service at the very core of its education. Service learning is, it's always been a part of AUB. For as long as I was doing service learning at AUC, we used to do joint faculty trainings between AUB and AUC around pedagogy for service learning. So I'm with you. The question is, how can we all work together and how can we also use universities to reach out to schools? You know, when you think about University of Pennsylvania, when they did their service learning, what did they do? They were very smart. They focused their service learning on West Philadelphia, where public schools were abysmal and where the overall, that was like an emerging market next to an affluent market all in one city. And they had all their service learning focused, their students go to the schools in West Philadelphia and work with children in schools. We can do that here. There's nothing that's stopping us.
young entrepreneur, to be very honest, if that's possible.
I feel like we're just out of time. I know we're just out of time, but I would welcome this question in the coffee break. We're going to have the coffee break in just about 10 or 15 minutes. So, and I felt like the question of citizenship was a really strong note to end on. I think it's something that we can keep in our minds, as well as the numerous things that we heard today around vocational training, K through 12 and the importance, the cultural and mindset shift. All of these, like, really insightful. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to our audience for your engagement as well. Thank you. Yes. Oh, group photo, apparently. So, please, Nina. Sorry? No, please, nobody leave. We're not at the coffee break yet. Apologies. We are, please, grab a seat. We're going to do one fun activity. I promise you it's a fun one. It'll be very fast, and then you can go out and get your coffee break. So, thank you. Yes, quick picture. I'm watching you. Okay. Now, who's ready for a test of their knowledge? Yes, ready for a test of knowledge? Okay, so we're going to have a quiz. Like I mentioned earlier, this quiz is going to ask you your knowledge. Each question is going to show up. There's 3 answers. We're going to do it very simple. We're going to raise our hands. A, B, is C. They're multiple choice. I might ask some of you, if you raised your hand, to give us your thoughts. Why did you vote for the answer that you voted for? And we could take it from there. Clear? So far, so good? We'll start with the first one. It's an easy one so that you can get into the groove. Okay, so the first question. Which of the following skills is not considered a 21st century skill? So, cloud computing, raise your hand. Problem solving, raise your hand. Handwriting, raise your hand. Okay, good. Can we have show the answer? Handwriting. They're going to get harder from here, okay? They're going to get harder from here. Our next question. Okay, what % of the world's youth are currently unemployed? World. Is it 17%? Raise your hand, 17%. Is it 21%? Okay, more votes for 21. 35%? Okay, roughly the same between 21 and 35. What's the answer? 17%. Unfortunately, the numbers in the region are not as good, but we're going to get it further into that. Let's go to the next question. What was the youth unemployment rate in Lebanon in 2022? Okay, let's start with A. Raise your hand if you think it's A, just 13%. Yeah, maybe I gave that one away. So, B, 32%. Raise your hand if you think it's 32%. Raise them, okay? And what if you think it's 47%? Okay, roughly even between the two. What's the answer? 47%. This is compared, by the way, to a general unemployment rate of about 29%, if I have that number correct. 29%. So the youth is significantly more unemployed than general population. Our next question. What percentage of Lebanese employers believe there is a skill gap in the workforce that could be addressed through upskilling? Okay? Is it 45%? Raise your hand. Is it 79%? Raise your hand. Okay, we got more 79s. Is it 95%? Okay, I think the number one choice was 79%. And show the answer. It is 79%. So this one, we got this one. Okay, our next question. What percentage of businesses across the world have undergone some form of digital transformation? Okay, is it 30%? Raise your hand, 30% team. Okay, very few. 50%. Okay, we got more votes. 70%? Okay, that's almost the same. What is the answer? I need the answer. 70%, yes, it is 70%. Okay, great. What technology has seen the highest increase in adoption in recent years? So there's virtual reality, and we all saw Apple came up with their new headset recently. Virtual reality, who votes for that? Okay. IoT, Internet of Things, that's smart devices. Raise your hands if you think it's IoT. Or blockchain. Raise your hand if you think it's blockchain. Okay, the top vote was for IoT, and the answer is correct. IoT. Good work. Good work. Okay, get ready. I'm gonna ask some people here on their thoughts on this one. So, what is the most in-demand digital skill for 2023? Is it data analytics? Raise your hand, data analytics. Okay, a lot of people. Cybersecurity. Okay, fewer. Cloud computing. Okay, few. Okay, data. Why'd you say it was data? Because it's everywhere. Okay, data is everywhere. Who voted for cybersecurity? Why'd you vote for cybersecurity? Safety. Okay, we hear about all these cyber issues these days. Okay, who chose cloud computing? Okay, why'd you choose cloud computing? Okay, that's an answer right there. So if anyone didn't hear it, generative AI is going to drive a ton of computing power. We're going to need cloud computing. And congratulations, you are, answer please, correct. Correct. Okay, excellent. Next question. And this is another one where I want some input from you guys as the audience and ladies. What industry is leading in digital transformation? Is it healthcare? Raise your hand if it's healthcare. Leading? Define leading. One of the areas where we're seeing, I guess, the most innovation, probably investment, startups. So, okay, we're going to go back to healthcare. Who answered healthcare? Okay. Finance? Okay. Manufacturing. Okay, so the audience, okay, I want to hear, though, from some voices. Who voted healthcare? Healthcare. Why'd you vote for healthcare? After COVID. Okay, that's a good reasoning. After COVID, healthcare would be, especially remote health. There was a lot of investment in this kind of activity. Finance, who voted finance? Okay, we're going to hear from, why finance? Yes. You hate to go to the bank. Who likes to go to the bank? Sorry. Yes, Dino was talking about the power of Bitcoin and crypto. Okay, excellent. Okay, wonderful. Who said manufacturing? I know there were a few hands for manufacturing. Yes. Why'd you say manufacturing? Okay. And it makes sense. You know, a lot of the smart manufacturing is using IoT, right? Smart manufacturing. Machines are going to tell us when they need to be repaired, predictive maintenance, all these things. Unfortunately, it isn't manufacturing. It's not, hasn't advanced this much yet. But what is it? Finance. It is finance. Good job. Audience is on a roll. Okay, our next question. According to a report by the WEF, World Economic Forum, by 2025, how many jobs will be displaced by AI and automation? 85 million, raise your hands. 45 million, raise your hands. 240 million jobs, raise your hand. Okay, so our number one vote was for 85 million, and it is the answer? Answer, 85 million jobs. Okay, intercept me. You have to intercept the World Economic Forum, but... Okay. Wow. Okay. So 2045, different time frame than we're at, but I feel like that's an amazing stat, right? What we just heard is McKinsey did a report, 50% of jobs will be lost by 2045 across industries and fields. New report that just came out, okay? But let's see these numbers for the close. 85 million jobs lost. Well, what about our next question? Jobs created. How many jobs are going to be created by AI and automation? Is it 40 million? Raise your hand for 40 million. Without McKinsey. No, this is all World Economic Forum. So We're going to stay with the ones we have here. But who says 40 million? Raise your hands. Okay, few answers. 97 million? 97. Okay, that's more. 145 million. Okay, our top answer was 97 million, and the answer is 97. Who's fast with math and can tell me what's the net number of jobs lost versus created? 12. Thank you. 12 million jobs what? 12 million jobs gained, right? So we talk a lot about the threat of AI, but then this is a real potential for AI to be a job creation engine with creating 12 million net jobs here. Okay? Next question. Oh, here it is. How many unfilled tech jobs are there expected to be by 2030? Is it 176 million? Raise your hands. Okay, very few people. 220 million? Okay. 85 million? I feel like people did not vote for this question. I'm going to try again. Okay? Give it your best shot. It's okay. There's no grading. Even though we're in AUB, there's no grading on this. 176 million. Raise your hand high for me. Okay, very few. 120 million. Okay, that's more. 85 million. Okay, roughly we have the last two. What's the correct answer? 85 million jobs. Next question. I want to just mindful of our time. Go to the next one. Let's go to the next question, please. So skip 2 slides. Okay. Oh! Did you get the answer? We lost that one. It was a really good question. Okay, well, I'll ask you a question that's not on here. So Garry Kasparov was beaten in a game of chess. What is the new game, far more complex, that an AI recently beat a human on? Yes. AlphaGo. Yes, good job. Why was that a bigger landmark? Why was that a bigger thing? Yes, because it has infinitely open possibilities. Chess has a lot of clear rules, and this has like really infinitely open possibilities, and thinking moves way, way in advance. And yeah, so our AI is getting smarter, but hopefully we're going to be creating jobs. Thank you so much for your engagement. Really fun having this quiz with you. Now we will break. Let me just quickly give you some logistics. We're going to break for coffee. After that, we're going to go into the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are not here. You're going to have to walk out of the building and to the right, and there will be ushers guiding you to where those will be. Each group will have a spokesperson to share with us their findings. When we come back together, we'll be on the roof to share our findings and to have some closing words. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great discussion in the breakouts. Okay.
Great.
Hi. Please. Listen, I need to just turn my mic off.